Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the Mad Mamluks. I'm Mahin and I'm here with my co-hosts, Sheikh Amir, Saeed, and Sim. Today we have a very special guest on the show, one who does not need any introduction, Dr. Yasir Qadhi. Sheikh Yasir, Jazakallah khair for coming on the show.
Jazakallah khair, alhamdulillah, the pleasure is mine. It's a pleasure to be here.
Let's get right into the meat and potatoes of the show. Here on the Mad Mamluks, we try and promote a platform for Muslims from various backgrounds to come together to talk about issues that affect us all despite our differences. And we try and put those differences aside in order to make progress in our communities. And back in 2007, you were part of a group of individuals that led an initiative called the Pledge of Mutual Understanding and Cooperation. Now, for the benefit of our listeners, this pledge was an initiative to quell some of the divisive rhetoric that existed in the 90s and the early 2000s in the Western world between some of the, various Sunni groups, quite frankly, to, put it bluntly, between the Sufis and the Salafis. We've talked about them before on the show. In a post 9/11 world, right, we have a lot of other issues to worry about rather than some of these 1,000-year-old dogmatic issues. Now, it's been almost a decade since that pledge. Do you feel we've made progress in that regard?
The very fact that you have to introduce and define the pledge, the very fact that the majority of your viewers and listeners would not even know what the pledge is enough of an indication that we had a resounding success. Because when the pledge came out, it caused such a big controversy, and we got lambasted and bombarded from both sides. But now, essentially, it's a non-existence because it's a non-entity, because the average Muslim is not even aware that there are differences between the signatories of the pledge by and large. They've moved beyond that type of divisive rhetoric, and alhamdulillah, I feel very confident in stating that the average practicing Muslim, even if he or she is vaguely aware that there are different strands between some of these movements, understands that all of them are not just tolerating, but genuinely respectful of the other. So I feel that the pledge was done. I have no regrets whatsoever, and I feel the pledge was done in an appropriate time and place, and we have moved on from it. Nobody even needs to read it anymore because it's not needed. The fact of the matter, and you just have to open your eyes and see the types of people that are on the fringe of both of these movements and want to exacerbate the tension, those people are disenfranchised and marginalized by the mainstreams now. And their voices are, even if they're heard, they have zero impact in the actual dynamics of a community.
I mean, you really think so? I mean, now we live in a YouTube generation, right? I mean, social media is a lot more prevalent than it was back then.
YouTube generation, so a click doesn't mean action. If a weirdo puts up a video and has 50,000, 100,000 clicks, but nothing actually happens as a result, so what? I mean, cat videos have millions of viewerships, and what does that do for the world, right? So in terms of actual tangible efforts, in terms of changing people's lives, these fringe voices, these hardcore, whether they're hardcore Sufis who want to basically claim Salafis are out of the fold of Islam, or hardcore Madkhalis who want to basically claim everybody other than their 5 people in their father's basement are upon the manhaj and everybody else is out of it. I mean, what tangible impact are they having in the world? Yeah. Other than barking really loudly, there's really nothing that they're doing, right. Nor do they bring about any actual change. And subhanAllah, let me put it this way. Which scholar have they actually taken down and discredited? Do you see what I'm saying? Which scholar's popularity or acceptance has actually been diminished, much less completely thrown off by all that they're doing? I'm talking about all extremes, not just one side. Because there are extremist voices on the Sufi side. I mean, we have to just quickly mention here the Chechnya conference that took place, 2-3 weeks ago, where essentially it was a political statement to try to say that the Athari or the Salafi school is not even a part of Sunni Islam. And they invited hundreds of people to come and do this. But what happened as a result of that? Nothing. So even governments were involved in that one, right? And you had some very famous luminaries, and I don't like mentioning names too much, so let's pass it. But let's just say one of the mainstream scholars of that trend of Islam was the brains and the person behind it. But what has happened? I mean, nothing. So in the end of the day, I'm a strong believer in, as Allah says in the Quran, فَأَمَّا الزَّبَدُ فَيَذْهَبُ جُفَاءً وَأَمَّا مَا يَنْفَعُ النَّاسَ فَيَمْكُثُ فِي الْأَرْضِ. So and of course that translates as for the froth and as for basically the scum, if one's translation says, it's just going to be left. It's going to go. It's like the waves at the top of the ocean. That which is of no benefit is going to just go away. And as for that which benefits the people, that will remain in the world. So my philosophy has been, and I've been active in da'wah and giving khutbahs literally for 25 years of my life, and I'm now 41 years old. Literally, alhamdulillah, my first khutbah was when I was a teenager. And my own eyes have demonstrated the truth of the statement that let the critics criticize and let the people say what they're saying. You better make sure you're sincere. You better make sure you preach what you believe is the truth. Because, your belief of the truth might change, but your sincerity should not change. Right? What you believe is the truth might be modified. So as you all know, and especially I'm talking to these people here, as you all know, I've been through many phases in my life, and I've preached what I thought was the truth at all of those phases. And inshallah, Allah blessed me in all of those phases, inshallah, because inshallah there was sincerity there. And if I retract, if I upgrade, if I move back, the point is, inshallah, the sincerity is still there, so the barakah is going to be there, right? But the people that don't have that sincerity, they're seeking the YouTube likes, they're seeking the fame, there is no question that there is not going to be barakah, blessedness in their da'wah.
When you and other scholars led the charge for this agreement, it took a principled stance, right? Do you feel like one of the critiques of the scholarship community is valid in that they only take principled stances when it's politically convenient? For example, it's kind of politically convenient to condemn ISIS, whereas really the Russian campaign in Syria, that's a little different. Do you think we are a little shy in this scholarship community in that we only condemn things when it's politically convenient? Is that fair to say? So,
the issue of condemning, the issue of highlighting each and every grievance, we all have to be practical and pragmatic. There's, the joke about not the WhatsApp, but the app. What is it called? The I condemn app. There's a joke going on. How many things are you going to condemn, right? There's no question, me particularly being in America, I need to contextualize what to condemn and when to condemn it. And there's nothing wrong, absolutely nothing wrong with being contextual. If something happens in America that some crazy lunatic does in Florida, let's say, right, who happens to be of our faith, the fact that we have to condemn it more than somebody living in Timbuktu, why should that bat an eyelid? Of course, it's a contextual response. And Islam tells us to be, and what did the Prophet say in Sahih Bukhari, the famous hadith, that were it not for the fact that the Quraysh would say that the Prophet Muhammad does such and such, kills those one followers, then, because the issue came of executing the lead munafiq of Medina, right? The head munafiq of Medina. And everybody knew he's a munafiq. Everybody knows the guy's khabith and filthy. Everybody knows he deserves that punishment. But the Prophet took into account the context, the reality, what is the fancy term, of course, has been smeared as fiqh al-waqi', but fiqh al-waqi' is a part of Islam. That what is the actual repercussions? So, frankly, it's only the neophytes and the overzealous, undereducated types of people that cannot see past the fact that it is understood that community leaders do need to take into account the pulse of this society they're living in. So if they condemn these types of things, as long as either at that time or eventually they also condemn other things that need to be condemned. And I hope, inshallah, that my stance is principled here. Even at ISLA, you guys attended. You saw what I said yesterday and the day before yesterday, right? And for those that didn't attend, I did in my own way, and it wasn't politically incorrect, but neither was it politically correct. I was very clear in my condemnation of honoring these types of people that are going to fight wars in Iraq. I was very clear in that because Islam had done that. And I on stage, on main stage Saturday, I said what I said, and the video will be coming up soon. You can listen to that. Now, other people would have said, why are you even attending the event? You should boycott. Okay, I don't disrespect that ijtihad, but isn't it better that somebody is there and presents an alternative viewpoint to the very people who have seen the Pledge of Allegiance in front of all these troops and honoring the people who went and fought in Iraq? Isn't it better that I then get on stage, on that very stage, 20 minutes after all of this has happened, and then say, for some people, and I said this, for some people, patriotism means to go and fight wars on behalf of their country. But who gets to define patriotism? For me, patriotism means to speak out for the truth, even if it means against the country. And to show that, or to talk about the fact that not all wars are just, some wars are false. And to be a part of those wars is actually abetting and aiding, I didn't say murder, but basically killing innocents or something of this nature. I don't remember my exact words. You can listen to it when it comes up on YouTube. But my point is, what is wrong with contextualizing what's going on and then giving a dignified response that will actually impact the people?
And that's the kind of response that was missing when a lot of this rhetoric was going on 15 or so years ago. Nowadays, it's very easy to condemn all the young people who went to join ISIS from Western countries and around the world. But at the end of the day, it was the leadership and scholarly community that kind of dropped the ball on this one by not talking about these complex issues like the caliphate and jihad, and not addressing these issues when they were relevant to young people. Having said that, the scholars also had their own concerns with regards to security, because some of these topics require nuanced answers that could be taken out of context, and there may be some security concerns that come along with that.
So I wrote an article about this, the lure of radicalism in the American Muslim community, and in it I confess that I myself was silent for a number of years after coming back from Medina, because I was scared for myself and my family. Because as we all know, there are people, our brothers, Sheikh Ali Tamimi, and these brothers that are there, that we feel passionately are innocent, right? And I'm smeared to this day, and I mentioned his name on purpose, because I'm smeared to this day by the far right. Because I wrote on Muslim Matters about this, and my perception of, Sheikh and others of this nature, they are not guilty of their charges of terrorism. And, Allah Azza wa Jalla knows the ultimate truth, but that's our perception. They're not as they're portrayed by the government. So when you're in that situation, you really have to think, do I want to get, that up high scale? Do I want to really become so prominent? Maybe it's best to keep low key and just, teach tahara and salah and zakah and dhikr, and it was a wake up call for me when, Umar Abdul Muttalib, the underwear bomber, did what he did. It's a wake up call for me, like, you know what? I don't have the luxury to be quiet, because I genuinely disagree with this version of jihad. It causes more harm than good. Its tactics are haram, and the maslaha is far less than the mafsada, right? Their grievances are legitimate, or our hearts are with the Syrian people, our hearts are with the innocent people that are being killed, but not every grievance has a legitimate way to be manifested, right? So I felt strongly that, look, it's time that I need to start speaking out. And alhamdulillah, I have been. And, I've had my own personal trials from both sides. As you know, the far right and ISIS is basically, I'm the death threat on both of them. But inshallah, Allah is the Wallahu khairun hafidhan wa huwa arhamur rahimin.
You'd also mentioned that you recently joined the Fiqh Council of North America. And one of the things we had discussed already on the show are kind of revolved around working together despite some of our ideological differences. So you've got UMJA, you got the Fiqh Council. I mean, you got these various councils out there. Do you think we should work towards having just one unified council, bringing together all voices of Sunni Islam? I mean, some of whom aren't necessarily represented on some of the existing councils. I mean, that's the challenge I see. I don't see necessarily all the voices of Sunni Islam being represented on some of these councils.
So obviously this idea is not new. In fact, our forefathers, my father, others had this back in the 60s and 70s. They were thinking about having some type of umbrella organization. In fact, we are seeing some of these umbrella organizations, MSA and ISNA, they all had this vision way before we were born. Yes. And the Fiqh Council of North America, which I just became a member of this year, so now I'm a part of the Fiqh Council, this is the oldest such body. It goes back to, I should know the exact date, but basically back to the late 70s, early 80s. This is the first Fiqh Council that was established, for all of North America. For reasons beyond the scope of this show, it kind of, stagnated, and it's not held in such respect anymore as it used to be.
Many people haven't even heard about it.
Many people haven't even heard about it, which is one of the reasons why they're reaching out to a newer generation, such as myself, because the goal is to revitalize it and to bring it back, because the one thing that it has that none of the other organizations has, it was the first and the most prestigious back in the day. So if you're really looking for age, just like ISNA is the oldest organization, nothing can trump ISNA. the word Trump can no longer be used, unfortunately. It always has a negative connotation. But we have to reclaim the word Trump even, because we'll get rid of the actual Trump and reclaim the English word Trump. But the idea has been there for the longest time. The problem was that because America is such a free society, there cannot be a type of forcing of a fatwa on any Muslim.
What if it's something non-binding?
When it's non-binding, when the ummah itself is so divided, every group is happy with its own firqa, right? Then of what use will a Fiqh Council be if every practicing Muslim already has a marja, already has a source that they go back to? So the Deobandis are happy with the Deobandi ulama, the Salafis are happy with the Kibarul ulama, the Ikhwan are happy with their own, Qardawi or whoever. Each group has its own. So if you form a council, and the history of forming councils has shown this, you'll always divide the community into two groups. One group that will follow the council, and one group that will still follow what they followed before the council came into being, right? So let's look at reality.
So is every group represented in that reality?
So let's look at reality. I was just saying, let's look at reality. Amjad, okay? Amjad is one such council. And alhamdulillah, a lot of Muslims that are conservative and practicing, they kind of look up to Amjad and they take from it. But still, there's another group of just as conservative, just as practicing Muslims who really don't care what Amjad says. For example, here in Chicago, the Deobandis of Chicago, they really, really don't care what the fatwa, Amjad says, especially when the Zabiha thing comes in, right? Which actually I disagree with, as you also know, alhamdulillah. And it's not a big deal to them. Now you have the Zaytuna crowd, and they care more about what their particular, mashayikh say, okay? And then you have the hardcore Salafis, or even the moderate Salafis. Forget the hardcore, they really don't have much to say. But even the mainstream moderate Salafis, right? You guys remember, you were here in Chicago when I gave the talk about bridging the Salafi and Ash'ari divide. The mainstream, not the fanatical, the mainstream Salafis had a big issue with my talk, and they're not going to take what's going to happen if we form yet another council. So the Fiqh Council is being revitalized. I'm just there. Zaytuna they don't really have a Fiqh Council, but at the end of the day, there are positions that they take in Fiqh that all of their students follow, right? The same goes for, the Deobandi segment. And even the Deobandi segment, as far as I know, is not absolutely united in North America. There are strands within the Deobandi segment as well. That being the case, what do you think is going to happen if we were to now form yet another Fiqh Council, okay, and have its appointed mufti come in to say, what's going to happen? Look at Australia, by the way. Australia has a government-appointed mufti, okay? There's a government-appointed mufti. And because he's government-appointed, what do you think his weight is in the Muslim community?
0.
Exactly. So that's Australia. Other communities have their self-appointed muftis. But because it's a free land and country, once again, what is that going to do? So I personally am not a fan of forming another Fiqh Council unless with this one big caveat and condition, you actually get the people whose followings are very large, very massive, and who are genuinely respected of different diverse thoughts come together. And then once again, the question which has always been bothering the Ummah for the last 12 and a half or 13 centuries, to what level do we compromise? Okay, so right now as we stand, the Fiqh Council of North America does have a token representative from the Ja'fari, the Shi'i community. It's a token. It doesn't actually come and participate, right? But do we retain this person? Do we not retain this person? Is it just a token issue, or is it something that, now the Amjad, right? Amjad has Azharis. Amjad has Salafis. Amjad has, Deobandis, right? So should they also include Barelis?
And that seems like that's a debate that we're going to have for a very long time. But as Sheikh Amir said, differences of opinion in fiqh don't necessarily mean Muslims are disunited. It just means that we have different ways of looking at things.
Of course. But again, these are all, mashallah, nice platitudes. They sound so good. The devil is in the details, yes. Okay? Moonsighting. Amjad's stance is hardcore. There is no compromise. That calculations are a bid'ah. And the Fiqh Council's positions is, the maslahah of the community. They're not arguing that this is the default. They're saying context should dictate we move beyond this and see. New York has to declare Eid on a particular day. You're going to tell them, oh, we don't know till the day before. Delaware has followed suit. Inshallah, other states are going to follow suit, right? Right now, our iman and taqwa is inshallah high enough level that I'll take either of the 2 days off. My grandkids, your grandkids, are they going to actually care that much about Eid that they're going to, schedule 2 days off, right? Or how about, there's a million and one factors that we need to think of. And again, I'll be very frank here. I myself have changed my position over the last 10 years on this issue because of being in the community and being a community leader. It's so easy sitting in a room, reading books and thinking you know the haqq from the batil and you know the correct position. When you have the responsibility of leading a community, and you see the repercussions of opinions, and you see the reality and dynamics, that's knowledge that books cannot and do not teach you, right? And so my position is that calculations are not the default, they're not the norm, and they should be avoided. But guess what, guys? We're living in America as a minority, and I need to think 50, 100 years in advance. And in this case, it's not a matter of haram and halal. This is a whole marjuh. This is a whole that is not the strongest. But the context and the reality of the situation is telling us that we should prefer the minority opinion over the majority opinion because of the context that we're living in, right?
So, for instance, if Yusuf Qaradawi was to tell his followers to follow the, Fiqh Council or AMJA, I think they would follow the Fiqh Council. And yeah, we understand it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen right away, but at least it'll get the ball rolling. Kind of like the pledge of 2007. After a while, it's going to become normalized.
Alhamdulillah, you brought up a really good point. So, I say this all the time. I'm a pragmatist. I'm not a utopic idealist. I'm a pragmatist. Pragmatically speaking, we're never going to have full unanimity in the American Muslim.
You're right.
So what then is the pragmatic goal? To get a critical mass, to get an overwhelming majority. And I'm very, very optimistic that that's going to happen in our lifetimes, not in the next lifetime. In fact, conversations have already begun. I'm kind of giving a big secret away, so please, guys, keep it on the DL for now. It's on the mic. It's on the DL for now. But inshallah, conversations have already begun. I'm on the Fiqh Council of North America. I'm on the General Assembly of AMJA, not on the Shura, but on the General Assembly. Conversations have begun to try to bridge some gaps as well. Inshallah, we'll also be reaching out to other organizations as well. So this is exactly my vision. This is what I've been doing for the last decade, and alhamdulillah, you guys know this, to bring the mainstream together so that we don't have the luxury to be divided over the petty, the minutiae. We don't have the luxury to start bickering and dividing our masajid. Where there's genuine iman and taqwa, we come together. And the general Sunni Muslims, alhamdulillah, our shared heritage is enough for us to bridge our divides and to come together for the greater good. And the irony is every major international Fiqh Council demonstrates this. Look at the OIC, right? Look at the Rabita. Look at any international Fiqh Council. It is very open-minded in accepting people from many different strands of Sunni Islam. And yet, unfortunately, us here in America, we're the ones who are more narrow-minded, right? And that's the irony here. SubhanAllah, look at, Sheikh bin Baz was the president of the Fiqh OIC for so many years, right? Look at the people that were on that OIC's Fiqh Council in Mecca, the one that still issues so many fatwa. You have all stripes of Sufis, all stripes of Ash'arism. Even there were some people that were semi-Mu'tazilite, right? But you had people from all across the globe. And it is, in my opinion, one of the most effective councils that really talks about global issues, right? This is the OIC's, the Rabit al-Alam al-Islami's Fiqh Council, and it has a series of publications and volumes. And these are fatwa that I turn to for guidance, for modern issues. Yet, unfortunately, we have Deobandis and Salafis and Ash'aris here in America, still some of them, not wanting to divide, but I still say that's the minority. Alhamdulillah, for the last 10 years, we have seen more step towards unity.
One of the overarching themes of the Mad Mamluks podcast is that we encourage young Muslims being confident in taking principled stances when it's needed. Something that's been on many people's minds lately is Colin Kaepernick and the whole issue of him not standing for the national anthem. How do we as a community build this kind of confidence so that our children can take principled, confident stances and in general kind of being comfortable in their skin walking around in this modern era?
Yeah, so each person needs to look at his or her own status, because there's a fine line between confidence and foolishness, right? There's a fine line between going overboard. And you need to wisely assess who exactly you are, how much clout you have, how far can you push the boundary or the red line, right? So, I actually mentioned Colin's example yesterday in my talk at ISNA. I actually mentioned that. But let's not forget, he is the quarterback for, the 49ers. Now, that's a very, very prestigious position. You need to develop that prestige. You need to get to that level of mainstream acceptance before you can take such a principled stand. If he were a nobody at some non-league or whatever, and he did that, he wouldn't have even half the support that he has right now. So a Muslim especially should be extra wise and cautious.
Look, I bring this up because I don't know if you follow this story, but there were a couple of teenagers in Switzerland not too long ago, and they refused to shake their teacher's hand. Apparently Switzerland has a tradition where after class ends, as you're walking past the teacher, you shake the teacher's hand, and the teacher being a female, the students refused to shake her hand. This got them a lot of hot water, and they eventually refused to budge on this stance that they took, and they eventually got expelled from school. What really bothered me was that the Muslim community in Switzerland completely abandoned them. And what they basically said that, this is a minority opinion, and, their opinion doesn't represent all of us. And they kind of left them hung out to dry and just completely distanced themselves from it. Whoa, what's your take on that?
Obviously, there are issues that even fiqh-wise I might disagree with, and yet we have to support the right of people in a liberal society to follow liberalism. And of course, the Burkini is a classic example where the values of liberalism are clearly contradicted, right? Now, the irony of the Muslim community, subhanAllah, it's so frustrating. So when I put my post on the Burkini ban and I criticized the French, I got at least 10% of the comments criticizing me for daring to even say that a woman should be wearing, even though I didn't say she can wear the burkini. I didn't say that at all. But we have these Muslims who are, and a very famous sheikh, I'm not going to mention names, actually said, I support the burkini ban, right? Because I don't want Muslim women to be going there, and the ban is, or whatever he said, the burkini is not even shari anyway. So it's good that, they banned it. And again, you really wonder at how narrow-minded such people are, that they really can't even see the forest for the trees, They can't see beyond their little bubble that they're living in, that what is being done is the Muslim community is being stigmatized, that Muslim culture is being banned, and all you're worried about is, why was that lady on the beach in the first place? I would not go there with my wife. I'm not going to go there myself. I'm as you know, a conservative sheikh in the end of the day. But okay, she's there now. Whatever she's there for, do you want the government to tell her what to wear or not? And again, this is our problem. We need to educate our overzealous brothers before we educate other people. The same goes for this handshake issue. Now, my personal position is, okay, I understand there's a classical controversy, and maybe it's makruh to shake the hand, so it's not necessarily haram. But look, that's what these kids were doing. You're going to expel them from school? Because they're not going to, or you're going to, sorry, in this case it was a fine, I think, right? Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, right? Mm-hmm. So you're going to find them, you're actually going to call the police on them? Yeah. Rather than criticize the fiqh position. There's a time and a place to do that. In this particular case, I think it's makruh, so it's not haram necessarily, especially in this environment. These are teenage kids, she's probably an elderly lady. Even majority of fiqh might make an exception for an elderly lady, that. That's besides the point, forget the fiqh of it. Can you not see the forest for the trees here? Can you not understand that this is an all-out assault on the religion of Islam and the culture of Islam, right? And the same applies for, again, the niqab issue, right? My personal position is that in the Western world, perhaps the wearing of the niqab is not the most important fiqh principle, and that the reality is that indeed the niqab is a part of our tradition and culture. There's no question. It's mustahab in some circumstances. But in the environment we're living in, I don't view it as mustahab. That the face of a woman is not going to be that type of a fitna. But it's not my position to tell an individual Muslimah lady, if she feels that that's going to bring her closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's her business, it's her prerogative, and I have to support her liberal right to dress as she sees fit.
Would you, as someone who is involved in fiqh, take into account the dangers of Muslim women wearing garments such as the niqab in this current socio-political climate?
So it's a case-by-case basis, and every person of knowledge should look at his own or her own environment and decide. I believe that most American cities, in daylight especially, and in congested areas, are safe enough that a lady can wear niqab, and that the max she's going to face is a verbal harassment. And verbal harassments are not to that level of threat that she should change her identity. No doubt, if the fear is more, or if there's a ghalabat al-dhann, which basically means there's a presumption, a reasonable presumption that there's going to be physical harm, there's no doubt that in this case the Sharia would say that she should not be harmed, and she should take off the niqab, or even frankly, the hijab, if there's a threat of life. But where in the Western world is it that bad? I don't know of any place like that.
It is very isolated.
It is isolated, so we don't make judgments based on isolated cases, right? So the stabbing of our sister in New York that happened, and we don't even know if it's a hate crime or not, because the official police report was that it's a robbery. Allah knows best. But even if it proves to be a hate crime, right? How many hijabis are in New York? Hundreds of thousands, right? And so if one sister was targeted, it's a bit of an extremist reaction to say, oh, all of our sisters in danger. Rather, we say sisters take reasonable precautions at this stage, right? And we can reevaluate as the situation changes.
I know we're running out of time. I just wanted you to shed some light on this initiative of going to Palestine and the awareness that it raises.
And this is in reference to the group you're leading in December. So this is a platform actually where you can talk about that trip if you want.
Okay, mashallah, free plug-in. Okay, I'm not complaining. Okay, alhamdulillah. Actually, to be honest, I appreciate the offer. I don't need the plug-in, but I'll plug in anyway. There's only a few seats left. They'll be gone. Dar Islam is doing it, so it's on their website if you want to go. 24th December to 1st January. Now, I went last year as a triple package. It was Jerusalem and Mecca and Medina. So it was called 3x3, so 3 nights in every city. And it was my first trip to Aqsa. Wallahi, I fell in love with the city. I just fell in love with the city. It's so beautiful. The original structures from the time of Salahuddin Ayyubi, the entire city, you're walking on the same cobblestones, on the same, the entire plaza there, going back almost 1,000 years, or a little bit less than 1,000, but still, the actual mihrab and minbar from that time frame, you can see this mihrab was, dedicated by Salahuddin Ayyubi. You see that with your eyes. On the day that he conquered Jerusalem, is still there. And just to be in that place, obviously, is also very painful because you see the brutality of occupation, right? But, and so for this trip, I fell so much in love with Jerusalem. I actually said, and this is my decision, I said, I don't want to go to Mecca and Medina this year with my group. I just want to spend a week because we barely had time to wander around the old city, to go and look at all of the old quarters, the Jewish quarter, the Christian quarter, the Muslim quarter, to just get a feel for the city. We're just there for 2.5 days. And it just didn't give me the full exposure. So we're going to spend double, triple that time, also go to Petra and other sites there, alhamdulillah. So if you're interested, you can do that. But one point I need to mention here. Everywhere we went, our Palestinian brothers and sisters were begging us, go back and tell the American Muslims we need you. We need you because you're the only ones that can give us our business. We make it a point that we stay in Palestinian hotels, we hire Palestinian buses, we get Palestinian tour guides, right? And they said that, look, if you guys don't come and support our businesses, who else is going to come and do that? The level of poverty, the level of, and there's economic boycott. You understand, it's a boycott over there. Nobody else is going to come to the Palestinian hotels. And I made it a point, and Dar Islam also makes this a point, that we are not going to give our businesses to any occupiers, to anybody who has occupied that land. Our business is only going to be given to our Palestinian brothers and sisters. If we're not, and wallahi, one of them said this to me, the guide said that, go back and tell the American Muslims that if you're not going to come, you're the one nationality, 2 or 3, but you're the one nationality that has the right and the privilege to come here. We need you to come and support us and our businesses. So, subhanAllah, it's so frustrating that there are fatwas out there from people that again and again, I have to control my tongue and I understand people get very angry when I speak like this, but there is a group of ulama who really are disconnected from reality. Let's just put it that way. there's a group, not all of them, not mainstream, but there are groups, and some of them are very erudite in knowledge of the book. Some of them are masters of Hanbali fiqh or Athari aqidah. Nobody's denying this. But when it comes to living in the modern world, it's as if they're living in a different galaxy, with my utmost respect to the knowledge of the Hanbali method. To give a fatwa that it is haram to visit Aqsa because it's under occupation, right? It's as if you're saying it's haram to visit a prisoner because he was put in prison for an unjust cause. Is it haram to visit a prisoner that was put in jail for an unjust cause and his prison? What's the fault of our Palestinian brothers and sisters? What have they done that they deserve to be punished, right? It's really, I mean, it's so frustrating to hear a scholar 1,000 miles away who has no reality of politics and the situation to give this bizarre fatwa, and then of course his acolytes, his people that look up to him, to, hook, line and sinker, whatever he says, it's as if it's the gospel truth. And this is what frustrates me. Ya ikhwan, my dear brothers and sisters, every alim, including me, is a human being. Take and leave. Be broad-minded. Listen to many people. Right? And I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect. And there are people whose specialities are X. There's people whose specialities are Y. Take Hanbali fiqh from the master of Hanbali fiqh. Take Athari aqidah from the master of Athari aqidah. But then you don't have to necessarily take everything about modern times from the guy who knows classical Athari theology. And this is really, and unfortunately, this when I released the announcement that I'm going again, once again, like maybe 5% of the comments, and I don't monitor all of them and let some of them fly and have to delete some that are vulgar, but around 5% or less of the comments, they're just so crude and vulgar. So you support the Israeli occupation. Don't you know it's haram to visit Aqsa? Like, subhanAllah, who gave you this understanding? Where do you get that it is haram to travel to Masjid al-Aqsa and pray over there and support your Palestine? We don't even land in that land. We land in Amman and we take the bus across the bridge because we do not want to give our money to the airline that is basically also with it. So we take the reasonable precautions as much as we can, and then we leave the rest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
And we believe, obviously, this is one message that we give also to our listeners, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us certain opportunities and gives us a certain responsibility that no one else can probably accomplish.
Based on living in America.
Exactly.
The privileges of living in America.
And one of those things is, since it's a privilege, now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you a responsibility. Just by hearing that, it gave me goosebumps by that person saying that please go and tell everybody, like a personal message. And they understand that. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed that to manifest on that person's tongue, so you can come here as of right now and actually tell all of us and all of our listeners, inshallah, because not everybody has these conversations with people when they go there. Because a lot of people aren't even going there, right? So this is the type of good inside information that I'm referring to.
When I went last year December, we're going again this year December. Can you imagine December, the peak season, when Mecca is going to be packed, right? When you're not going to find a hotel except with difficulty in Medina. Can you imagine in Aqsa, there were barely 2 or 3 rows in the peak season. It's empty. Why?
And their business should be over there.
Why? Well, 2 reasons. Number 1, occupation, right? Yeah. Because they're not allowing most, and then number 2, because the people that can go have this bizarre fatwa that it's haram to go. And it's so frustrating. I mean, I'm praying Salat al-Dhuhr and Maghrib and Isha and it's literally dead empty. And it's so sad that and one of the guys actually said to me, one of the Palestinians over there, he said, they want Muslims to stop coming here because as less and less people come and the more they encroach, there's going to be then less anger and less pushback. So we need to make it a point. And my advice to all of you who are going to go with the attitude that you're going to be harassed and intimidated at the border. Go with the attitude you're going to be pulled aside. That is your mini jihad, right? Yeah. To keep your composure, to not get irritated and angry, to let them ask the most ludicrous questions, as they did to our group. I sat there for 5.5 hours. 5.5 hours just sitting there, no clue what they're going to do. No clue. Put your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is what you have to do. And once you're there, they're going to, that you see the guards, they're going to do this. That's what you have to do. That's the negative that's going to come.
The average Palestinian experiences this on a
daily basis.
So by visiting Al-Aqsa, we're only experiencing this 1 or 2 days out of the entirety of our lives.
Exactly.
we claim that we fast to feel what the hungry feel. And if you want to feel for at least 1 or 2 days what our brothers and sisters in Palestine, the third holiest site in Islam, are feeling, then we can, visit them and at least temporarily feel what they feel, because they're not asking us for anything first and foremost. All they're asking is for our business, and we have that luxury of, coming back home after that visit. They have to live with that for the rest of their lives.
You know what? That's a great way to close out the show. I mean, our listeners, by the way, some of us, have known Sheikh Yasir for several years now. Me personally, I first met him when he was a fresh grad out of Medina. It's been over 10 years now. And mashallah, he's big time now, but we certainly appreciate you coming on, reaching out to the old crew when you're in the town. I mean, next time we'll take you out for some more Creekstone steak and burgers.
Alhamdulillah. That's one of the things I like about Chicago, man. I love Alhamdulillah you got the Creekstone steaks here. There's no question about it. It's one of the highlights for me to come to Chicago. Of course, along with your, of course, blessed company. Well, okay, it's far more blessed. I didn't want to say it, but okay, if you insist on it.
Yeah, if our listeners out there, if you have any questions or comments or, some feedback for our podcast, you can email us at themadmamluks@gmail.com. Check out our website, www.themadmamluks.com. Follow us on Twitter, The Mad Mamluks, like our Facebook page by the same name. Subscribe on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. Rate us 5 stars. For my co-host Sheikh Amir Saeed and Sim, I'm Mahin, signing off. Assalamu alaikum.